Dear Wolfgang, dear Dr. Thiemann, dear members of the German Bundestag, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear Mrs. Schäuble, guten Abend, ich freue mich, zu sein. This is my limited German for the evening. But it will get better, I promise you. So next time you award my friend Wolfgang Schäuble, my German will be fluent. First of all, I would like to congratulate Reporters Sans Frontières. It gives me great pleasure to have a French compatriot tonight, and I think it's very fitting that France, in a way, is honored together with Germany. The English philosopher John Stuart Mill once observed that a great statesman is he who knows when to depart from traditions as well as when to adhere to them. And it is with those words in mind that I would like to celebrate Wolfgang Schäuble's contribution to public life. You embody, Wolfgang, what I see as the model of Germany in Europe, and the model of the fight for democracy and freedom. That Germany, which is a fearless and implacable defender of its values and a beacon of liberalism and democracy, but also the Germany that is ready to move when needed to uphold the European idea. One thing Wolfgang and I have in common is that we are both lawyers by background. Sometimes people are unhappy about me being a lawyer, but that's okay. And like all good lawyers, we like disclaimers, so I'm going to start with a disclaimer. This event tonight is not about the ECB. It is not about monetary policy or other economic policies. So anybody who is interested in just that should please leave the room. Because tonight is only about Wolfgang Schäuble. So I will not talk about monetary policy. Any of you trying to elicit a hint or an innuendo or something that would eventually mean something for monetary policy, forget it. Not tonight. I was actually asked to speak at this event when I was still the managing director of the IMF. And I was honored to do so in recognition of our long shared history as colleagues and as friends. But of course, the occasion has taken a slightly added meaning now that I'm no longer the managing director of the IMF, but the president of the European Central Bank in my new role working for Europe, which is something that we have both discussed many times over. There are few who have done as much for Europe over such a period of time as you have, Wolfgang. And I'm not going tonight, in my remarks, I'm not going to recount the many private conversations that we've had, because they should remain private. Nor your many achievements, because they have just been mentioned, and all of you in this room and way beyond know about them. I would like instead to use this moment to focus on only 3 of the many qualities that you have, and ones that, to me, identify you in the way in which you have fought for Europe and you have fought for Germany. They are your commitment, your rigor, and your statesmanship. Wolfgang is receiving this award tonight in recognition of his commitment to a unified Europe and stable democracy in Germany. And commitment is a quality that has run through his blood like a thread throughout his entire public life. I wasn't here on the 4th of November 30 years ago. I remember vividly where I was. And on this very day 30 years ago, only a few blocks from here, 1 million people, as you mentioned, you included, demanded reform, demanded democracy, demanded freedom in the largest demonstration East Germany had ever seen. And the fall of the Berlin Wall ushered in a profound transformation of German and European history as well. And as Minister of Interior, you were at the very heart of what was happening at the time. But your commitment to your own country was always matched by your commitment to Europe. And you understood that each made the other stronger. You saw immediately that German reunification could trigger optimism at home, but anxiety abroad. You knew that the best way for Germany to demonstrate the strength of its historical responsibility to Europe was to share a currency with its neighbors. At the same time, a single currency would safeguard the single market against the risk of competitive devaluations as we had seen them. So we can only be thankful that when the crisis erupted, you were once again in a position of influence. You reminded us at the time that the euro was not just a currency, but way more than that. And your unyielding defense of Europe was a bulwark of those very febrile times. And that is best captured in your belief that, and I quote you here, if a solution is good for Europe, it is good for Germany, and if something is bad for Europe, it cannot be good for Germany. Now, of course, there have been different views about what constitutes a good solution for Europe, such as the appropriate balance between sharing risks and reducing risks, and how one can lead to the other and vice versa. But I was always struck by the fact that once you had agreed a way ahead with your European partners, you always defended it with conviction. And I know that this was not easy. You had to tread a very careful path between maintaining confidence in the euro at home and making the necessary reforms to safeguard the single currency. And the fact that 81% of Germans back the euro today, and the euro is more popular than ever among the wider European public, is, in my view, testament to you navigating that course, that very thin line between what was necessary at home and what had to change. And what allowed you to actually achieve that and gave you the pride of so many around you was your second quality, which was your intellectual rigor. I have had many occasions to observe your forensic mind at work, because you combine the subtlety and the foresight of a statesman with the scrutiny and the attention to details of a very shrewd tax lawyer. That's a really strong combination. You are notorious for picking apart shallow arguments and for your intolerance for superficiality. You don't suffer fools gladly. Your brilliant mind has often put you at the forefront of European debates. In the 90s, you were already writing about how to build a more deeply integrated European framework around the countries that would go on to share the single currency. You understood very early on that a monetary union comprising different sovereign states can only be sustainable if there is mutual trust. And you realized, and you made us realize, that trust does not only emerge through good declarations and speeches or treaties, however necessary they are. It is built through actions that demonstrate the commitment of states to abide by the promises that they have signed up to. You saw, in other words, that rules are not sufficient and an end in themselves. How many times, I can't even recollect, how many times have I heard you say, implementation, implementation? Because you knew that it is through faithful implementation and respect for the rules that trust builds up between countries. And it is once trust has developed that more sharing of sovereignty can follow, which reinforces the strength of the Union and of each of its members. Now, in the face of changing reality, the challenge, of course, is how to ensure that governance is both credible and yet flexible. As you have said yourself, I quote, "Sticking to the rules does not mean a lack of creativity or originality." And it is this spirit that we will need to channel our efforts to deepen our economic and monetary union. And if we are to move forward, we will certainly need that third quality that I have mentioned, statesmanship. I have witnessed this in action during many long nights in Brussels and at global meetings. And there is much that I have come to admire at such times. You are a formidable negotiator. When everybody leaves the table, Wolfgang Schäuble stays at the table, never gives up. And I've always known you to be fair and straight, allowing points of differences to be identified and solutions to be found, however long it took. And one of the qualities that I cherish is that you are a straight talker. You speak Klartext, as you say in German. But that directness has always been married with loyalty and kindness. You know that successful diplomacy is built not through sheer force of personality, but through shared understanding with one's partners, and especially within Europe. There were times during the crisis when you had to take tough decisions. And you spoke recently of your sadness for those who have suffered. And you said that you often think about how we could have done things differently, and that characterizes a real statesman. The one who has the capacity to examine profoundly the best course of action while avoiding false certainty. Wolfgang, for the last 2 years, you've taken a new role as President of the Bundestag, and it is a step that befits a life dedicated to German and to European democracy. And yet again, you are the right person in the right place and at the right time. There's much concern today about the rise of extreme views and the coarsening of political discourse. We are seeing it. But displaying your characteristic sang-froid, you have reminded us to be confident in ourselves and in the resilience of our democratic institutions. As you have said, our free democratic system, based on the rule of law, is so strong that nobody can wreck it, neither from within nor from without. Anybody who tries will fail. Now, for anybody in doubt, bear those words in mind. A lot has to do with how much confidence we have and how prepared we are to defend those principles. I believe this is a message that all Europeans and all of Europe needs to hear today. A message of strength, a message of resolve, a message of courage. And a call to remember our better selves and not to allow self-doubt to drag us down. For you, in the spirit of Max Weber, politics has always been more than a Beruf, but it has been a Berufung, not just a job, but a calling. Now, in the name of our friendship and of Germany and France sometimes working together, I would like to finish in the light of this wonderful award with a word that is, I think, erroneously attributed to Voltaire, but which is nonetheless quite good. Voltaire is alleged to have said, "I will not always agree with you, but I will fight to death to make sure that you have the freedom to express your view." Thank you, Wolfgang, for fighting for those rights.